Hello, everyone, and welcome again to one of Chart's free webinars. Today, we have 5 and 5 bright ideas and quick takeaways presented by 5 Chart members that are going to be presented at the Chart conference in Chicago. Thank you and welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here. My name is Jennifer Belk-White, and I'm thrilled to be joined by 4 other Chart team members who will be sharing their bright ideas from their breakout sessions at the upcoming Chart conference. I do want to make sure that everybody is aware of our upcoming conference in Chicago, August 11th through 14th. We'd love to see you all there, but if you're not able to come, or if you're watching this recorded webinar at some point after the conference, do know that what you're going to get in today's session will be immediately actionable, usable ideas for you to help transform your training. And so I'd like to start by introducing Rebecca Berry from Serve Success. Rebecca.
Thank you, Jennifer. Well, I am so excited to be here and discussing our strategy number 1 for culture transformation, leadership for your leaders. And Jen, if you can go to the next slide, please. So we're going to talk about culture transformation and what that means. And there's so many different things that my partner, Brian Henry from Slim Chickens, and I are going to discuss in August. And he is not here today, but he will be there with me side by side. We're going to talk about goals, mentors, feedback, training, certification, and so many different things. But today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is mentors. So next slide, please. So let's look at the impact of mentorship in hospitality and why it matters. Before we jump into some of the stats here, I'm going to begin with a personal story. Brian and I led a training earlier this year, and in that training, we were discussing this topic. I went around the room and asked volunteers to share a story about their mentor. I had one trainee raise their hand and say, "Rebecca, I have to be honest. I don't have a mentor." With that honest answer came about 50% of the room to follow suit and say the same. And in that moment, I knew we had to pivot our training to coaching on now not just how to be a mentor, but the importance of mentorship and how to create a mentor program for everyone. Now, we need our leaders to have a place and a person to go to so they can continue to thrive and be better coaches, right? So trust me, if you think your therapist doesn't have a therapist, you're seeking advice from the wrong person. So why is mentorship so important in hospitality? Let's talk about this. High turnover rates, right? The hospitality industry is notorious for high turnover rates. The constant churn can be costly and disruptive in our business. I mean, mentorship can be a powerful tool that we all have to combat these issues. And when employees have a mentor, they feel more supported, right? And connected in their workplace. I know I do. It's very important. And that significantly improves retention. And a study done by Cornell Center for Hospitality Research found that mentor programs can reduce turnover rates by 32%. Now, did you all know that 76% of people in the hospitality industry think mentors are important? But this will be a good one for you. 37% don't have one. Now, that shows that we have a big opportunity to help our employees grow by setting up mentorship and training programs. We can support their careers and make our workplaces even better. We have informal mentorship programs, and those can be beneficial, but structured mentor training programs ensure that we are consistent and reliable when it comes to supporting our employees. And training equips mentors with skills that they need to provide effective guidance, from active, listening and empathy to conflict resolution, and important things that we saw in that roadmap, which is goal setting. And I talk a lot about happy and healthy employees, and that's what we all want, right? Well, when you have a team member who's been mentored, according to Harvard Business Review, 89% say that they will go on to mentor other employees. And that's what we want, right? Is we're going to build that cycle of improving employee morale and continue to build mentors. Next slide, please, Jen. So with that, we're going to look at how we want to build the best culture possible that is going to attract and retain talent. We also want past employees to remember us as a guiding star in their career. And mentor training programs help to foster a culture of learning and support within our organizations. When mentorship is part of the company culture, it encourages continuous professional development and fosters a sense of community and belonging. I know when we have people to look up to, we tend to thrive more. And when we continue to coach, up and coming employees, it makes us feel good, right? It improves that positive culture, which can also lead to higher employee satisfaction as well as engagement, which ultimately enhances what? What are we all here for? Our guest experience as well. So how do we implement mentor training programs? We want to identify our positive mentors. Those are individuals who demonstrate leadership, empathy, and a willingness to teach. And I've got a bunch of great people here on this panel who are willing to teach, who I would consider mentors as well. And these mentors should have a track record of success and a genuine interest in helping people grow. They are designing or implementing training programs. We also want to look at developing comprehensive training modules that cover essential mentoring skills. So topics should include things like communication. We also saw in that roadmap goal setting, providing feedback. Something that I think is really important is conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is something that we're really digging more into to alleviate stress and anxiety in the workplace. And we want to really mentor on how to develop those skills. It's really important. Developing comprehensive training really sets that approach. We want to incorporate real world scenarios and role play. And I know so many people are going, Rebecca, really role play again, but it works, you guys. I see James laughing over there and Jen, but it's true, right? We want to give our mentors practical experience, and we want to provide resources and ongoing support to mentors, like regular check-ins. We want to have that cadence, additional training sessions, and access to mentorship coordinators. I know it's a new thing, but it's something that's really important to keep that cycle going. And I would say Ray Kroc put it best: when you're green, you're growing, and when you're ripe, you rot. So let's grow our mentor programs and our leaders. And with that, in true Rebecca tradition, I had to throw something at Jennifer last minute because I'm that person who goes, wait a second, one more to throw out there. Any of you were at the NRA show and got a chance to see Liz Moscow. She's a futurist, and she presented, and at the 11th hour changed her entire track. And I've been fortunate to get to know her, and she's somebody that has made me think of this quote. And I'm seeing her as somebody who kind of is turning into not only an industry leader and mentor for me, but a friend as well. And this quote has really made me think of not just her, but other people. And it's important, right? This is from Joel Osteen. And you need people in your life that are further along than you, people that have a bigger vision, people that are more experienced, people that are out of your league. You need to be exposed to new levels so that you can go to new levels. And Brian and I were talking about this when it comes to leadership. Like, we constantly have opportunities to mentor others, but for us to be better leaders, we need to continue to be mentored. And so with that, I would also like to thank some of my greatest mentors: Kim Green, who was one of my first true, big girl job bosses, who taught me some great lessons; Gary Sedovey, who was one of the founders of Restaurant Technologies, which was the job that got me into this industry, who still today is one of my dearest friends; Rick Nichols. And for many of you who know little Rich Snyder, those are some of my greatest mentors. So let's keep mentoring. Let's develop great mentor programs. And I'm excited to share more in August. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Kurt.
Awesome. Thanks, Rebecca. That was fantastic. Thanks for leading us off. So my name is Kurt Arshamble. I'm with People Performance Strategies, as well as your head strategist for the Chart Board. So what I'm here to talk about is actually one of our competencies that we were presenting as a pre-con in Chicago, and that's around operational knowledge. So we have a couple of things that we're going to pull from here, but there's an interesting statistic, and Rebecca did a great job in giving us some good foundational statistics, but we know that 50% of all Fortune 500 companies do not consider training and development as part of their strategic planning process. And I know that some of you are probably well aware of that. Others are like, really? I'm fully engaged. But the question we have to answer is, where do we start? And as you can imagine, the conversation can go to us versus them experience. And the more we go down that path of us versus them, we result in a maybe even wider gap between that percentage. So where do we want to start? And this is where our operational knowledge competency can really support you. So we're going to pull one item out of operational knowledge that's going to talk a little bit about how you can start to close that gap, be considered a strategic partner in your strategic planning, and help you align a little bit better. So the two areas that we're going to focus in on is the area of alignment and contribution. And these are directly from our operational knowledge assessment. We're going to pull one of those out of the competency. So let's go ahead and walk our way down through these items. So the first and very foremost area that we want to do is make sure that we as trainers understand our company's strategic goals. So often we get so caught up in the day-to-day tasks that we sometimes lose sight of the big picture of why we're doing those tasks. So here's some simple actions that you can do to get more aligned with your company's strategic goals. Find out where that strategic plan is hiding. Get yourself a copy of it. Go to the website, whatever it is. Find that annual report for your organization. Stay on top. Get in your news feeds, press releases about your organization, what they're talking about, who they're talking with. What are some things that they will help you understand what are the organization's short-term and long-term goals? And why is this important to us as trainers? Man, we got stuff to do. Why do I want to pay attention to that? Well, this is going to help you when you go into that design mode and making sure that whatever you're putting together is aligned with those objectives so that we can be seen as a direct contributor to the company's success. Otherwise, we get in this cycle of doing things that maybe are of less value, which then reduces our status and our ability to add value to the organization. Item number 2 on this list is map those training initiatives to the corporate objectives, right? Try not to be always reactive to what people are talking to you about, but be a little bit more proactive. So the easiest thing to do is get that detailed map out that links each of your training programs. So you might want to do this reactively right now. It's like, are we doing the things that are driving company results? Or are we responding to symptoms of issues and creating training programs? And I know each of you know how long it takes to get a training program up and off the ground. So we want to make sure we're working on the high value added activities. Use visuals to illustrate how each training initiative supports key business objectives. And you'll be talking the language of those executives and the folks, your key stakeholders. But by doing this, you're going to clearly show that connection between training and corporate goals, and those stakeholders are going to see the value and relevance of your programs, which is going to elevate those programs, and you're going to get individuals referencing your programs to help drive business results. So you get those operations partners helping you do that. So that's always a key critical area. Step number 3, or activity number 3, is to really start developing metrics to measure training impact. We've talked a lot at Chart around things like ROI and making sure that you are dialed in. So make sure that your metrics are not the standard metrics. And I know many of you have been in leading learning and development for years. We used to identify our success by level 1 evaluations and butts and seats and things along those lines. But what we have to really do is tie to our KPIs or key performance indicators of the organization so that we're speaking the same language. So for example, metrics might include, yes, improved employee performance. How well are they doing at their job? I know one that's hot on everybody's topic is increasing sales. We want to make sure, as you probably have already seen in a lot of news, lots of restaurants are in the news for closing down. So we want to make sure that not only we're driving sales, but on the second side, we're reducing costs. How are we helping with our cost management? How is our training initiatives increasing retention? And how are our cost or our training initiatives improving customer satisfaction? So really speak those languages and tie those metrics to your training program. And what that will do for you is, again, build that credibility that what you're producing and getting out there to the operations teams and the people that are making an impact in the organization is that you are tied into the organization's success. The second or the fourth one here is interesting, and this is collaborating with those key stakeholders, engaging with leaders from various departments to understand their challenges and needs. If you are not regularly talking to the marketing folks, if you're not regularly talking to the finance team, if you're not regularly talking to HR, depending upon who you report to, you need to be in those conversations, getting to know what's causing them pain, and then seeing how you can align your training initiatives to support those things and help reduce issues that they might be feeling. Get them involved early on so that you can tailor your training programs to address those specific issues that they might be struggling with or they have as their KPIs. You will build, and the reason we want to do this, you're going to build some strong relationships with those stakeholders. You're going to ensure that your training initiatives are relevant. That's a key term when it comes to training. We want to be relevant and supported across the organization, fostering collaboration and alignment. A lot of really great words right there. And then our last one, and this one should be pretty, it's maybe one that's an afterthought. We're always moving on to the next thing. And sometimes we don't look back at the previous thing and talk about the successes of that thing. So in this case, as tip number 5 of our 5 action steps is to communicate your training successes. So get out there, regularly share success stories. Make sure you're at those meetings where you can provide data-driven results of your training programs with the senior management and other key stakeholders. And use whatever methodology you can. Reports, presentations, internal communications. I know we have a lot of tools that we communicate out to the field. Make sure that you tie in how training has connected to that. So when we're celebrating issues going on in the organization, throw a little something in there for the training team and how they've contributed to that, or the training activities that we've done. And do this on a consistent basis. Try to make this a regular cadence for you to talk about the positive impact of training so that it helps improve and reinforce its value, ensures ongoing support, and here's the kicker, you continue to get investments in your training programs. We know it's changed a little bit, but we know that when we get tight with cash, sometimes training is first on the list as far as staff reductions. If we're seen as value adds and we're increasing performance, we may be a little bit lower down on that list. But we want to make sure that we can continue to show that. And that means we have to champion ourselves in the things that we're doing. So to kind of wrap this all up, really what we want to try to go from is that us versus them conversation and make it a we conversation. How can we help drive performance? We, with marketing, are making sure this new LTO is successful. We together are making that happen and supporting ourselves with the folks out in operations. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you for the opportunity to speak here, and I'm going to turn it over to the amazing James Frank to bring us to number 3.
Well, thank you so much, Kurt. Hi, everybody. I am James Frank. I'm an area leader of training for Raising Cane's, and I have the privilege of currently sitting on the board for CHART. I'm excited to have this opportunity to share with you some best practices for conversation and networking starters. And it's just a little part of a great breakout that I'm excited to be doing in August at the conference with the amazing Corbin Nichols. So let's start with open-ended. Ask open-ended questions in a more strategic way that don't leave someone thinking you're looking for one specific answer. Like, what do you do when? That sounds like you're looking for one thing versus rephrasing it as, what types of things do you do when? Which allows some more space for multiple answers, right? Because it's not about interrogating, it's about connection. So integration increases defenses of people, where connection is going to increase the dialogue. So let's talk about active listening, because that too is part of a conversation. Epictetus said, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Curiosity is actually your number 1 asset here, because listening actively to what they're saying and respond in accordance. Don't seek that one answer as your destination. Rather, seek the atlas to all the available destinations. Then, of course, connection, right? Connection is the desired result here. So pay attention to what they're saying. Find commonalities and embrace them. Sure enough, to let other people know that you are a real person. Tell a story, right? Give your background. Go beyond the cliches. So focusing on emotions and stories will create a deeper connection for you. So let's talk about colleagues. So colleagues want to feel a connection to you and have it extend outside of the typical dialogue. So colleagues also want to feel a sense of value to the organization based on what they've contributed. So asking to kickstart this can be very beneficial. Like, what's been the most rewarding part of your career? Or how did you land in the industry? A really good one is, what's the most helpful piece of career advice that you've ever been given? Or you actually could flip the script on this and ask, what's the one piece of advice you most like to give to others? Then, of course, we do have employees, okay? This is where the questions are about their role, motivation, and or even goals. Like, for instance, what gets you up in the morning? That's a great place to start the dialogue, and it helps you tailor their daily experiences around their passions. So it gives you a quick connection point that you'll be able to build from. Or, how do you most feel appreciated at work? This is going to allow you to have the clear line of sight into providing them an avenue straight towards appreciation and celebration. You could even say, what kind of support do you need from me? That's a great way to show them that you care. So, of course, another thing we have to look at is, oh yes, you guessed it, bosses and the boss's boss, right? This can be a little intimidating sometimes, but this is what I want to remind all of you. You were selected at your organizations for a reason. So there are, at times in your career, it can feel a little intimidating, right, to speak to a C-suite executive. But the important thing to remember is that you're the only one who feels nervous about this conversation. Now, what I mean by this is, if you were to bump into your COO at the office or in an elevator, they're not nervous to have a conversation with you. Why? Well, because they have the confidence in their abilities and they know the value that they bring to the business. Look, everyone has a role to play. And no matter what your role is, wear it as a badge of honor and pull forward that confidence it takes to feel ready. Look, you bring something to the table that is valued and cherished in your organization. And that goes beyond any tactical skills or abilities that you possess. The best conversation starters with your leadership are all about how you can contribute more or more effectively in that organization. By starting the conversation here, you show your motivation and desire to help while also taking ownership of your role. It's a win-win for you. Yeah, you may walk away with a little more responsibility, but isn't that the point? So more responsibility is more influence and a leg up on changing the dynamics that you're living in. So now let's chat just briefly about networking starters because, well, most of us do attend conferences or meetings where networking can open the doors to so many future possibilities. It also can be one of the most intimidating places to start dialogue because, well, where do you start when you may not know anything about who you're standing around? It may be easier to dive into that good old TikTok or Facebook post, but breaking out of your shell and starting a conversation can be so helpful to changing the entirety of your meeting or conference experience. So here are just a few generic starters to that conversation. Let's start with the classics. These are the basics that can kick off any conversation very easily. What brought you here to this conference? Oh, what's your story? How did you get into the role that you're currently in? Then, of course, we have location, location, location. Look, everyone is at the same event, so you can actually use this to your benefit. Walk up to somebody and simply say, what nuggets of brilliance has stood out at this conference so far to you? Or even go, this venue is really interesting. Have you ever been here before? It really is that simple. Now, we all know that everybody has different personalities and there are some introverts, okay? So I want to challenge you to find someone that might look a little overwhelmed or on the outskirts of what everyone else is doing. Events can be very intimidating. So sometimes, isn't it nice just to take a breath on the outside looking in? Most people wear name badges, so there's your in to the conversation very, very easily. So this is what I want to leave with you right now. Start the conversation, right? Ultimately, no matter who you're speaking with, the ultimate goal is a connection beyond a closed-ended question. You are in it to have an impact of a very meaningful conversation. Now, while I've shared some great tools in the toolbox to kick off or start a conversation, once you've opened that gate, the next goal, of course, is to make it as meaningful as possible for everyone involved. So I'm glad I got to share this with you. And now I'm even more excited to pass this on to my fellow chart board member and friend, Jen. Take it away.
Thanks so much, James. And thank you for some great ideas. I'm going to use them for networking at the upcoming chart conference when I'm feeling a little nervous and overwhelmed. So today I'd like to speak about one of the breakouts that I am facilitating in August at the Chicago conference, and that's about experiential learning. And a lot of us tend to build experiential learning opportunities for our team members, or we say, oh, they'll learn that on the job, they'll learn it through experience. But sometimes when we don't really fully build the entire experiential learning cycle with intention and focus, then our learners could make stuff up. If we're not focusing on it, they're going to make up their own explanation. So it's important that we guide the learners toward the desired learning goals. So let's introduce the experiential learning cycle. David Colby developed this cycle and published it in 1984. And it is, as you see, an ongoing cycle, but we start with the concrete experience. We're going to experience an interaction with a guest, or we're going to experience an opportunity for conflict management. Then if we leave it at just the experience, who knows what learning is going to happen. But if we as learning and development professionals build in the rest of the learning cycle, opportunities for reflective observation, and then abstract conceptualization, and then active experimentation, how is it going to be in the real world? Then that experience has the true meaningful learning that we're looking for. So I'm going to use a simplification of the experiential learning cycle. Just experience something, then reflect on it, then think about it, and then take action. And I loved this quote from John Dewey because I think it's really reflective, no pun intended, of the whole idea of how to make experiential learning work. And that's that we do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on that experience and not just thinking about what happened, but then how are we going to apply that? And I read of a simplified, even more simplified version of the experiential learning cycle that takes the reflect, think, and act and turns it into what, so what, now what? What happened? So what does it matter? And now what am I going to do about it? And one thing that we as learning and development professionals can do is provide guided opportunities, whether it's in a classroom setting or one-on-one with a facilitator when you're doing on-the-job training, and give some guided focus so that the learner can reflect and think and then act based on that experience. So some questions to ask with the reflection, which is really focusing on the objective experience. What happened? What were my initial expectations of the training? Were those expectations met? What actually occurred during this interaction with the guest, during this potential conflict situation with a fellow coworker, objectively? So I want to really reflect on what that experience was and give the learner opportunities for that reflection. The next step is think. So what? What does that matter? And that's where you really help guide the learner to focus on the subjective experience. Everything from what knowledge or experience did you bring to the situation? As an adult learner, you came into this with knowledge and experience. And so, how did that help you? How did that potentially get in your way? How did you think, you thought it was going to be similar to a situation that you had in your previous work environment, but our culture is a little bit different here. And so, how did your prior knowledge both help you and potentially limit you? What might you have done differently? What did you learn from this? And what's your understanding now of the situation? And then finally, the most important thing, because really the purpose of learning in our environments is to apply that learning on the job, to apply it in future situations. So that's the action stage here. Now what? What do I do with this experience that I've had? And here, your focus as the trainer is to help the learner learn how to carry forward the lessons that they learned into the next experience. So how can they apply the learning, not just in something similar, but in other contexts, on other contexts? How can we transfer that knowledge? Is there any follow-up that we need to do to address any challenges or difficulties? And then to really deep dive into it, what are the root causes of any of those issues or difficulties, and how can we address those? So by really taking a look at the full experiential learning cycle, rather than just trusting that the learners will learn from their experience without our focused and intentional guidance, we can ensure that the organizational objectives and the learning objectives are met. Thank you. And I'm going to now turn it over to Todd Horchner.
Thank you, Jennifer. Wow, there's some great content from some great friends. A lot of what has helped me to get where I am at today. I'm the owner and founder of Legacy Event Productions. I'm a lifetime chart member. My first career was with Chuck E. Cheese, 20 years plus there, doing conferences and such. And so I'm not here to talk so much about Legacy Event Productions, but talk about the experiences I had in living out the events of putting on conferences for Chuck E. Cheese. So we would go and to all these hotels and do all these events, and I was so frustrated about just not getting the cues right, not having the lighting right, the teleprompter's not working, and we have feedback, and then they charged me way too much money for all those things. And so I said, man, I should start a company. And right at that moment, I started a company. So we've been in business for 16 years, and we've really just are aiming to serve people like yourselves in the restaurant. I do realize that there's not only restaurants on the call, but there's also hotels. And some of my mentors, you mentioned mentors, Rebecca, are from the hotel industry, and they taught me a lot about just the inner workings of hotels and how they work and how AV works and all the things that you can work around to have a successful event. So we're all in it for the mutual, accomplishment of the client, which is the person putting on the event. So I guess my pitfalls to avoid and what we'll be talking in Chicago. I'm going to bring a good friend of mine and a mentor, personal friend, and maybe a few other ones, but one will be Jason Lechner from the Pizza Ranch. He is going to bring a perspective from the client side, and I'll help round out some of his challenges as he puts on conferences and how we can solve those things. Some of the pitfalls to avoid, I would say, is one, to not sign so quickly on a contract, to really read the fine print. Do a site visit would be number 2 or 3. Doing a site visit to the property so much helps a lot of things, not just from hotel logistics and rooms and meals and all that, but to the AV, because that's what when they walk into the room, they're going to spend most of their time in that conference room. And so anything from the air conditioner, the smell, the ceiling heights, the width, there's so many different pieces that become part of the learning that these attendees are going to have. So we really encourage a site visit, and many times as a company, we'll pay for a site visit just because it helps you and it helps us. What's a BEO? We're going to cover that. I mean, I think you guys know what a BEO is. It's a banquet events order. But what's on that? Some people get the 25, 35, 110 page BEO, and it's everything from pens and paper to tablecloths to extension cords to the full-on big ticket items. You can easily gloss over some of the small things that can cost you lots of money, thousands of dollars if you're not paying attention. So we really want to kind of help round out the whole experiential, immersive learning of a conference from the time the doors open up to the time the doors close. We're not presenters, but we help presenters present. And so some of the important things are transitions and voiceovers and having an MC. Sometimes there's a good company representative that can MC, and sometimes there's just not. And so people are just walking up on stage and talking. So we really try to not only provide the AV for companies, but to help people with transitions and making it professional and just kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So we're all about impact, execution, results. Thank you for that slide. I was going to ask for that. Here's a few of our satisfied clients. Many chart members, and again, it's not about legacy, but it's about really stepping in. As a chart member, a lifetime chart member, and a former restaurant operator, I've been doing this for 16 years, and I love nothing more than just having relationships with people to help them get the most out of a venue, get the most out of opening the doors and doing an event. Kurt, you mentioned ROI, return on investment. Man, you're spending some big bucks when you're going to do a general manager conference at any property. Just not even counting getting them there, but it's just a whole package. It could be over $1 million, $2 million. And I've seen that happen. And then James, you mentioned listening, and having conversations. We're good about just listening to people and seeing what their headaches are. You have a headache, and just like I did when I was at Chuck E. Cheese, I went about it a different way. I just started a company, but listening to our clients to see what their real needs are, and then delivering specifically to those needs. So I look forward to being in Chicago, and just helping people, sift through all those things. Jason and I will work together on a team to answer any questions and help shape, what your next event could look like. I appreciate the time on this call, and I think I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jennifer.
Thanks so much, Todd. I really wish I had some of your guidance when I tried to set up my first GM meeting, 20 years ago. I didn't know what a BEO was. I was deer in the headlights. And so a session like yours would have made a real difference for me at that stage in my career. I would like to thank, once again, all of my fellow participants today, facilitators today, Rebecca, Kurt, James, Todd. Thank you so much for sharing your nuggets of wisdom, not just with us here on the webinar today, but also at our upcoming conference. And for all of you here listening to the webinar today, we invite you to join us in Chicago, August 11th through 14th. We are still in the early bird registration time through July 2nd. So you can go to chart.org to get more information and to register. And now we are going to open it up to questions. So if you have been putting questions in the Q&A, I have not been looking at that so far, but give me just a second to stop my screen share and end my slideshow and
Jen,
go ahead.
While you look in the chat, and everyone, if you want to send yours into chat, there are two that came in on the side. The first one, which I'll read so you don't have to try to find it. The first one is addressed to Rebecca. Barry, how do you match mentors with mentees in a restaurant setting?
That's a great question, Tara. And, a lot of that is evaluating skill set and personality. You really want to ensure that you're aligning the goals of where the mentee wants to head, where their career path is designed to go and where the mentor is going, along with personality, right? So you want to evaluate from the start at that onboarding process and when you're crafting those programs to ensure you have a good personality alignment and also a good career trajectory alignment. And we can get into more of those details. I'm happy also to dive into that ever with anybody who wants to chat more offline as well, too.
Okay, I have two other questions, unless any more come in on chat. This one also addressed to Rebecca. What role do mentors play in helping mentees navigate their career paths?
Experience is a huge thing. I think I personally, I think you all can attest, who are here as my fellow chart team and family members here, of having mentors in our lives who have passed down that experience of their careers, have offered guidance of where you can go and mistakes not to make. I know there's plenty of people who have shared their mishaps along the way that have helped me of not doing those things as well, and I have continued to pass that down as I help to mentor. And I think that really makes a big difference, is sharing the history and the experience, right, of just the work they've done. So having that experience is key when it comes to the career path.
Okay, thank you. And the last question I have, unless anything else comes in on chat, is addressed to James Frank. How do you know if you have been a part of a great conversation?
Oh, well, for me, there's nothing more I enjoy than having an enjoyable conversation. And I know I'm in a good conversation because how it makes me feel. When I walk away feeling heard or understood or energized or even inspired, I just like it when there's a positive emotion that's attached to it. And then there's those special conversations I have with someone where I get up the next day or even several days later, and I'm still thinking about that conversation because something in it changed me because of having had that conversation. Because I believe a conversation can truly be the catalyst to changing lives, because it has mine.
So James, I'll jump in on that actually. And that's where I brought up Liz in kind of my mentoring conversation. Is I met her through another partner in the industry and an introduction, and just she's having that person who's a little bit further ahead, and that mentoring piece, the conversations I've had with her, I woke up one morning and went, that was a life-changing conversation. And also now looking at her as also a kind of a mentor now she's become, but also a life-changing conversation, right? Or you wake up and go have this aha moment.
Yeah, I agree. I love the feeling of the potential at the start of every conversation with somebody, because there's a certain power in it, right? It's a power to clarify, to heal, or even transform, right? And a power to connect with somebody, that little spark or inspiration. I just love it. I truly think that a lot of times conversations do turn out to be life-changing. So I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it absolutely is.
Yeah, I think back to a mentor that I had in my mid-20s who she probably does not remember this conversation. It was, I'm sure for her, just a random sentence, but it changed the trajectory of my life. And I still feel almost chills when I think about what she said to me and how I interpreted it based on where I was at the time and what it did for me. And so we never know the impact that we're having on other people. So I don't see any other questions in the chat. I'm going to give it a minute or so just to see if anybody's been thinking about a question that you want to put out there. But otherwise, we will wrap it up, and we will hope to see as many of you as possible in Chicago in August at the Palmer House. And please get more information at chart.org. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We appreciate it. Have a great day. Bye-bye.